Hello there, I'm Banshee's Lord 69, and I welcome you to my second slideshow video of discoveries in Soy Row, as well as the first shooting gallery in Rojas Desert South, and the intro to Atcha. So this is the shooting gallery discovery in Soy Row. It's essentially Professor Genki's super ethical reality challenge for dummies, which takes away all the danger and skill required to complete it, leaving behind the targets for you to track down and shoot like these first few here. Some targets, like this one here, are a little more well hidden, while other targets are right out in the open, plain as day, like these next two. Here's another one in such an obvious place you can't miss it, and the next one is right around the corner in a place so obvious it practically hits you in the face. Here's another barely hidden target tucked right around the corner, and over here is another one tucked right into the corner, hiding in plain sight. Aha! You see? They were trying to be a little sneakier with this one here. Fortunately, we were close enough that we could see it easily. Unfortunately, this is the point at which they can start getting harder to find, and it can help to climb a little higher to get a bird's eye view, sometimes more to see where they aren't rather than where they are. Also, at the beginning of the video, you may have noticed the flying saucer closer to the ground. I will be circling back to that one in a bit. Some of the targets, they make you work a little harder to get at them. Like this one here on top of this big drum. They make you climb all the way up here just to shoot it. Speaking of a bird's eye view, standing on top of this drum, you can see the entire shooting gallery. So be sure to take advantage while you're up here. Here's the point at which it gets a little trickier to finish this thing. Unfortunately, you may have seen the flying saucer near the ground at the beginning of the video, but alas, in my haste, I did not. At long last, as promised, there's the flying saucer I said I would circle back around and shoot. 14 targets down and one final target to go. Unfortunately, when completing the shooting gallery, there's always that one target near the end that you just can't seem to find. To make matters worse, it's usually in some obvious place hiding in plain sight, and you can't believe you didn't see it before when you finally do find it. To be perfectly honest, there's nothing really wrong with the shooting gallery. It's not a terrible diversion on the map to complete, it's just a bit dull. There's no real challenge to it, no time limits, no point total you have to reach, nothing trying to take you out. You're just sort of running around shooting targets and you can't really fail. But with a $4,000 payout, it's not a bad payday for completing it. It's actually rather irritating and almost a bit embarrassing that it's taken me this long to find the final target, especially since I've already walked past it a couple of times already and not seen it. In fact, you may have even seen that on the video. You may have noticed that once again I've got my lady here walking around undressed. Well, you see, the shooting galleries are typically in out-of-the-way spots in the middle of nowhere with no one really around to see her, so I thought, just for the yucks, I'd do this with her running around in her underwear. Again. Bear with me, dear viewer. I'm almost at the point at which I shoot the final target, and it shan't be much longer. I'm just going to check over in this corner again to see if it's hiding over here. Alas, dear viewer, it wasn't in that corner, so I must look onward. There I go again. I've walked past the target and not seen it. I'm so very close at this point, it's downright maddening to watch. Here we go, we're closing in on the final target, dear viewer. Oh, by the way, what is that weird beeping sound? That is such a strange noise. If you know, tell me in the comments. With that, the final target is found, and the shooting gallery is done. In the previous slideshow video, I talked about how I would do the side hustles and the criminal ventures differently. In this video, I'd like to talk about how I would have done the story in Soy Row differently. And just for good measure, I'll even do the version with the Soy Boys. So, without any further ado, to-do a hullabaloo, here's my good version of the Saints Row Reboot story, the Soy Boy version. As I've stated before, my version of the story would have begun with the mission Observe and Report because it does a better job of making our main character look far more capable and more than adequately portrays the fact that our main character worked for Marshall at the beginning of the story, while it connects our main character with JR right from the word go. I never liked the original opening mission for Soy Row because it portrays our main character as a bumbling idiot. Additionally, the locker room scene at the end is downright cringe, with Gwen creating an HR issue by invading your privacy when she comes down to the locker room with an empty envelope just to tell you you did a crap job at work and to scold you for disobeying orders. The apartment scene after that is equally cringe and leads into the mission Making Rent, which never made sense to me personally. Why would your character risk gainful employment with Marshall by committing armed robbery simply to pay the rent when she could just have taken additional missions from work? In my version of Observe and Report, there would be no forced mission outfits, and players would simply be allowed to wear what they choose. The game would facilitate this by accessing players' bosses from Boss Factory and allowing players to choose which boss they wish to use. However, even though the game does portray your character as more capable in this mission, she does still get the crap beat out of her by a basic Pantanos lieutenant, and only survives because of a lucky rock throw that hits a conveniently placed semi-truck. In my version, I would correct this by having the player character massacre the Pantaros gang members and knock down the conveniently placed semi-truck as a sort of dramatic finisher.
You're the one Kev sent, right?
Yeah. What's the gig?
Ever hear of Atcha?
The review app?
That's the one. I need you to leave some bad reviews.
I don't know what Kev told you, but I don't come cheap. Anyone can leave a shitty review.
It's not the review I'm paying you for. It's what comes after.
Oh?
The targets on my list have some heavy hitters in their corner. You leave anything lower than 5 stars, they'll come out swinging. The lower the review, the harder they hit.
Now we're talking. Count me in.
Oh yes, because the most hardcore gangster thing someone can do is leave a bad Yelp review. Cringe. And did anyone notice how she just sort of popped out off screen like that? That's quite the bug, but then this is Soy Row after all. So I'm just going to be going over the map and showing you where all the atches are in the city. So make note of that while you're watching. Anyway, back to the story. So in my version of the ending cutscene, instead of Gwen creating an HR problem by invading your privacy in the locker room and wasting company resources by delivering an empty envelope to you, she would come down to the locker room and meet you outside of it to deliver your performance bonus from work and congratulate you on your promotion. Next, you'd be tasked with driving home, and the mission would end with a much less cringy version of the scene in the apartment in which you discuss your first day of work with your friends. Minus the whole bit about robbing the payday loan place, of course. The next mission would be the Peter Principle. Unfortunately, this is another one in which the original version of the mission uses forced mission clothing as well as forced mission weaponry. This is especially bad because the player is not given access to all of the weapons the player will be forced to use during the mission in order for the player to upgrade the weapons before the player is forced to use them. Worse yet, the mission does not use the player's customized versions of the weapons to which the player is given access. There isn't much I would change about this mission, really. Of course, the player would be allowed to wear whatever clothing the player desires, as well as use preferred weaponry, and the mission would no longer end by dumping the player immediately into the mission Be Your Own Boss. Instead, the player would be tasked with once again driving home, after which the mission would end with a cutscene in which the player character discusses with her friends what to do about paying the rent now that the player character is no longer gainfully employed. The cutscene would end with the player character and her friends planning an armed robbery, including disguises. The next mission would be a combination of 2 original Soy Row missions. Part 1 would be the mission Making Rent, which would be in the story at a point at which it makes sense because the player character is no longer gainfully employed. Part 2 would be the mission A Piece of the Action, which gives the player access to the Jim Rob's criminal venture. In the original mission Making Rent, the player character and her friends commit a brazen daytime armed robbery of a payday loan place while wearing no form of identity concealment whatsoever. The mission ends with a cutscene in which a well-placed spike strip is the player character injured and surrounded by police. Discount Lynn then comes to the player character's aid with an impromptu vehicle stunt to rescue the player character before the two drive home. This is followed up by a cringy phone call with Kevin that introduces the side hustles in Soy Row. In my version, the player character and her friends would rob a payday loan place dressed as martial officers, just as an added middle finger to Marshall for firing the player character. In the car ride over, the player character would scold Urkel for being a pussbag for listening to his self-help CDs instead of music. When at the payday loan place, the player character would stop the scared woman on her way out, pants her, then warn her not to pull her pants back up again until she gets to her car, at which point Discount Lynn would film the woman with her phone until the woman got to her car and left. The clerk at the payday loan place would use the momentary distraction to trigger the burglary alarm, prompting the player character to shoot the clerk dead. The player character would then be tasked with completing a safe-cracking minigame. The impending arrival of police would prompt the player character to send her friends away with the money, while the player character draws the police away by leading them on a chase through the city with some combative driving. In the ending cutscene, Discount Lynn would rescue the player character by jumping overhead in a car and dropping SMGs into the player character's hands. When the vehicle lands, the player character's friends would emerge from the vehicle, guns blazing, and the group would gun the police down in the street before returning home. The mission would be followed up by a phone call from JR asking for the player character's help on a business venture he's planning. What I'm approaching here is a simple little open-world diversion called A Crime of Opportunity. It involves shooting several small-time criminals and stealing their loot. Sometimes it rewards a good amount of money, and sometimes it doesn't. Complete it or don't, it's really dealer's choice in the end.
This job keeps
As for part 2, about the only thing I would change about the mission, a piece of the action,
Nice one.
not just gym robs, but all criminal ventures except for certain ones. And gym robs would be called rim jobs like it's supposed to be. If anyone has a problem with that, then go play Hello Kitty Island Adventure. Alas, telling my version of the story with the purple soy boy puss bags has taken longer than I had hoped, and I shan't be able to finish it in this video,
Check
so I
this
shall have to
out.
finish it in a follow-up video, and I look forward to telling you the rest of the story then. Well, that'll just about be the end of the video. So for now, I'm sorry for making you watch this. Download, comment, like, share, subscribe. I hope you were entertained. Keep all water fluoride free. Deboot the reboot. Let's make Saints Row fun. And I shall see you on the next video. Giddy giddy boing boing.